Diocese of the Rio Grande. Welcome back to the weekly update. I know, it's been a long summer. I've missed you, but I'm back and ready to go for the fall. In just a minute, I want to bring you a recent interview with Reza, our chaplain for the Borderland Ministries, in order to help you understand what's really going on at the border in New Mexico and far west Texas right now. But before we go there, I want to remind you to look at the diocesan website from time to time. JP Arosa has spent the summer doing a refresh on this website, and so there's some interesting things right here on the front page. As you open it up, you can sign up for a weekly email blast. This is how you get links to all the things that are coming up in the diocese, as well as deanery information, as well as some parochial information, and links to the videos, so that you'll never have to say, what's happening in the diocese? It's all right here, and you can sign up to be informed weekly about what's going on. Also, as part of the refresh, you will notice that there's a convention page, and I want you to click on the diocesan convention page. We need you to register if you're a delegate to convention and you haven't registered yet, but there's also information there already about the schedule for convention. This is where you will find information about the online meetings coming up, about the budget and resolutions, etc. Keep an eye on this page. It gets updated almost every week between now and November when convention is. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that this is the year when we in the Diocese of the Rio Grande will select our deputies, 4 clergy and 4 lay people, to represent the Diocese of the Rio Grande at the next General Convention of the Episcopal Church. Information about how you can run to be a deputy to General Convention is right here. Now, without further ado, here is Reza, Border Chaplain for the Diocese of the Rio Grande.
Well, thank you, Bishop Hunt, for inviting me to share what we're doing in our diocese. And first of all, I just want to thank all those congregations in our diocese and outside our diocese that are praying for us, and those we work in collaboration nationally. But yeah, here and everywhere, I mean, you see the news, we see a lot of movement happening right now with migrants. And I think, like you mentioned, the first thing is we got to pray, because a lot of that stuff looks very violent. And we got to remember that, people of color are, Latinx people are seeing this, and there's fear in their hearts. So one of the things we got to pray for is peace, and be aware of our community members and in our congregations nationally also, that there's people that are see that and just kind of get triggered, traumatized. But yeah, in El Paso, one of the things that we're trying to organize, and I'm working with different community organizations and working with organizers on what's happening with Fort Bliss. So Fort Bliss, right now, many have heard in the national news, and hopefully you've heard the story of this is going to be the biggest detention center in our diocese, in our backyard, holding up to 5,000 people. Right now, it is open. It officially opened on Sunday, of all days, Sunday, a holy day. And but it had already been open since August 1st. So we're just worried and concerned that human beings, people, our community members and our neighbors should not be held in places like that. And a lot of them actually were trying to follow the correct way, the way that the policies were laid out for them and the regulations. And that was taken away with this new administration. So suddenly they're the ones that also find themselves in the courts trying to do the right thing. So many women whose husband have gone have told me, my husband just wants to do this the right way, because either A, he shows up, and he doesn't show up, then now they are going to be after him. And what we've seen is, I mean, many of us have seen the violence of agents breaking windows. All I keep thinking is, man, they're adding another cost to that family that's already struggling. These things cost money and they affect us. I mean, that's a small little thing. The big one is they're taking their loved ones away. I mean, we have a woman that was separated from just this week at the court. The husband was detained, and she is pregnant. And so, she had a mental crisis, because now she finds herself with her partner, the person that she has made a commitment to bring this life forward, has now been detained and is no longer able to fulfill that promise, financially, and spiritual support and loving support. So that's the reality that's happening in our courts right now. Families are being separated. Families together are being taken to detention centers and or deported, and again, in the name of that they're criminals, and that they've done something wrong, like there's an evil. And that's the big thing, is please, let's pray that that mindset, that reality is taken away from the hearts of those that really believe it. They believe it. And you might talk to a neighbor and they're like, they're criminals. They should have been, we need to clean the system. And no, there are neighbors, they're brothers and sisters in Christ. And so we need to love and welcome with dignity, as our Episcopal nationally has been proclaiming. That's what we believe. That's who we are. And we got to continue to send that message and talk to people about that reality.
Yeah, so I want to back up a little bit and just kind of underline some of the things that you've said, Anna. The first is to point out and that as you mentioned, there's a facility that's going up at Fort Bliss. It was initially reported in the news that it would be like a physical walled building, et cetera, but Congresswoman Escobar has visited on Monday. That's 2 days ago, as of the time of this interview. And she pointed out that it is a tent, and it is a tent with, it has kind of floor to ceiling cages made out of chain link fence, and there are pictures you can find online about that. And she also pointed out that most of the people that are there, I think the figure she used was 70%, have no criminal past. So we're not talking about rounding up violent criminals, and also that some of those who do have, some of the 30% who do have a criminal background, what we're talking about is traffic tickets or maybe a DUI or something like that. Not that a DUI isn't serious, but to say what we were told is that the government was just going to be going after violent criminals, gang members, drug dealers, sex traffickers, weapons dealers, really dangerous people, right? But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing that that people who have emigrated the right way, or who have been here under DACA, meaning that they came here as children, that those are making up the majority of the people who are being arrested now by ICE. And even they are not necessarily being deported quickly back to Mexico. They're being held for months at a time. And so we have seen incidences of parishioners in our churches who have been, who came here as children, lived here for 20, 30 years without any criminal act at all, gave birth to children here in this country, raised them up here, and were arrested and detained for 2.5 months, just waiting for a court date to get out of jail. And this is the kind of thing that we're now seeing, is that the billions of dollars are being used by our federal government to build these facilities, not just here in Texas, but also in places like Louisiana and other parts of the country. Something north of $2 billion is being spent on that. And ICE is recruiting agents, offering $50,000 signing bonuses for people to really hunt their neighbors. And that money is coming from cuts that, this is all happening at a time when we're experiencing cuts to public radio, cuts to SNAP, and cuts to aid for rental assistance. So the money that is being shifted is a real values shift that's going on. And so we in the Diocese of the Rio Grande are responding in a variety of ways. So Anna, tell us a little bit more about kind of what your day is like, what you do when you go to the courthouse every day, and what you see when you're there. Let's just start with that.
Well, and today, actually, when I head before I go to the courthouse, on Wednesdays, um, appreciate Deacon Sandra planning this. We gather every Wednesday at 11 a.m. to pray. And a lot of the times, the people that go are the people that are the courts, because they just need some kind of love and reminder that they're not together, because what we are seeing in the courts is pretty heartbreaking. So usually I go in the afternoons. There's a group that goes in the morning. So I go, I leave my office around 11:50. Get there, I already have a place where I park, so I don't have to pay out a little outside. Once I get there, I go into the lobby of the 700 East San Antonio. And usually the families won't be let up to the seventh floor where they have the courts till 12:30. So when I get there,
And
I see
sorry to
a
interrupt,
couple of
but these are families who are here legally, right? They've legally claimed asylum. They've been allowed by the federal government to remain in the country while they're waiting for their case to be heard. They've received notification. You have a court date on this day. So that's why they get dressed up and they come to court. They're doing things the right way. I think this is another important thing. I've heard a number of people, even one of the bailiffs in the courthouse said, well, they should do it the right way. What we're talking about is people who have a court date because they are doing it the right way, right? They came here following the United States government's practice to claim asylum. And what they're asking for is for their asylum case to be heard. And so that's why they're in the courthouse. So proceed.
Yeah, so yes, exactly. I mean, because, sometimes I ask, oh, so they're there, I go up to them and I tell them, my name, I work for the Episcopal Church, that we've been coming since the end of May. I tell them, and one of the things that we see is that some migrants get detained. And so we are just here to give you some information. We are here to pray while you're at court. And there's some people that will go into the court to observe. And at that point, we start talking and sharing a little bit where they're coming from. Some of them are coming from Midland, Odessa, and Albuquerque. I've had people who come from Florida and San Antonio. And so they're, yes, they have their paperwork and they're like, well, no, I mean, I'm in the process of seeking asylum. We've done everything, we filled out everything. And I just let them know that we got to remember what this administration has changed. A lot of things have changed the rules of the game. So now the rules of the policy. So now people are in danger. And so I let them know if they're in court and they hear the attorney say that they want to drop the case, that's a big red flag of they might get detained. Because once the attorney does that, that leaves the door open for ICE to detain them once they're outside because they no longer have a case. Even though the judge, and I've sat in the court and I've heard the judge say, but you can appeal it. You'll have 30 days. And she asks every single person, and they're of course I want to appeal it. But since they've dropped the case, even though she's giving them 30, 90 days, what we've seen is most of them do get detained. And so what ICE wants them to do is fight their case inside the detention center. And that is just a little cruel because they're incarcerated. They're separated from their family, like that man with his pregnant wife. Now he's going to live in the stressful anxiety that he's not there to support his pregnant wife and because they make that commitment as a family to do that, and our government is breaking that commitment. and
Right.
and
And
so
and this
there's a
is
lot of desperation and fear
yeah.
and anxiety, and then you add on the being in clothes. They never turn off the lights. That's the major thing that I think would drive me a little crazy, and I think all of us, if we just think about that one thing. But it's not just that one thing. They get cold food, they eat some, and now that it's getting crowded because they're putting so many people in detention centers, over 59,000 people in detentions right now. It gets tenseful because the guards get tension, and so there's more screaming, there's fighting among inmates, because if you're going to treat people this way, I mean, the tension, the anxiety, the anger is going to rise. And that's not who we are. We are people that are trying to bring tension, anxiety down and bring peace. And that's not what we're doing as a government. We're putting people in corners and adding more trauma to what they've already had.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what you were saying about how the cases work, right? That the when the attorney says they want to drop the case, what that means is that they don't believe this person has a right to stay here. And if that case gets dropped, then the person is here illegally and they're subject to be deported. But just a minute before the attorney said we want to drop the case, they were here legally. So like the rug gets pulled out, can get pulled out from you in the courtroom very quickly. And those are the people where if your case gets dropped, they leave the courtroom, and that's where the masked ICE agents collect them right at the courthouse and take them away. But you're also saying, and this is another, it's the cruelty piece, which in my opinion is about they're trying to convince people not to come here to claim asylum. They're trying to convince people that the U.S. government is brutal and hostile and that they should leave. And part of that is being done by treating minor, like even if you appeal your case, right? So you say, I want to appeal. Well, if I'm in traffic court and I want to appeal my traffic violation or what have you, they don't put me in jail, right? The only people they put in jail are people that are murderers or are a danger to society. But here, what we're seeing, and part of what this is to create enough clients for this $2 billion prison that they're building, right? That if you've got a $2 billion prison that's staffed and running and the government's paying for it, well, let's make sure all the beds are full. And so what's happening now is they're saying, and these are people who've been living in the country for decades, have jobs, have families, are part of our churches, and they're being told, we're going to treat you as if you're a murderer. We're going to lock you up in these cages in a tent. And now you're talking about overcrowding that's going on there. So I think part of what people need to understand is the human reality of the way our legal policies are being implemented. I mean, I'd be the first one to say, hey, if you're a drug dealer or a threat to society, you should be held without bail, right? In a jail until you're absolutely. But what we're talking about now is punishment that doesn't fit the crime at all. We're talking about family members who have been here, who are doing everything right, who are saying, I'm coming to court to make my case. And they are the ones that are being detained for a month or 30 days or 2 months while they wait their hearing. It's heartbreaking. And that is what is causing fear, right? We're now starting to hear stories of American citizens who are rounded up by ICE and they're held for a couple of days until they can verify their citizenship. I spoke to a dear friend of mine who is Hispanic, a native New Mexican. Family's been here for hundreds of years, who is now carrying his passport card, a copy of his birth certificate, as well as his real ID, as well as proof of his job, because people who don't look like me, but who look like you're from New Mexico, right? People with Latino or Hispanic lineage are worried and afraid that they might be swept up. And even if it gets cleared up in a couple of days, it might be a couple of days in jail. And so that's the kind of campaign of fear and anxiety that is how it feels to live in El Paso or in New Mexico right now.
Yes, definitely. I mean, and one of the things that's happening also is as we connect with people, when they end up in the El Paso processing detention center, is visiting them. And in Albuquerque, where St. Michael's All Angels, St. Mark's now is starting to visit with a program called Vida. It gives you an opportunity to either visit as a group, so you're not just doing a one-on-one what I'm doing, but I mean there's such a value of doing a one-on-one. It's because each person gets around 30 or an hour to get a visit during the week, and most of, like I said, the families we encounter are from Odessa, Millen, and it's hard. It's 3 hours away, and the visits are from 6 to 8. So if the visit's on Sunday and you have work the next day, it's again this pull of what you do, and then the hurt again of being without your loved one. So please join Vida, and St. Michael's is a good with Reverend Mike Angel to find out more, because you don't have to just go visit. You can also just write letters. And Bill Everett, who started this parishioner at St. Michael's, and he started the program, he says you get so much more out of writing because they become like your friends. But again, and he just says use Google Translate when you're writing to people that are speaking another language. But the most important thing is the compassion and love. And it's hard. It's hard because you're stepping out and seeing this cruel reality. And, naturally, as survivors, we don't want to be in that cruel reality. But when our brothers and sisters are in there and, we have a different place, I mean, all we're going to do is feel the pain, not actually live the pain like they are living. But sometimes it's important. And that's why as community of faiths, we do it as a group and a ministry, and we come back and pray and we heal, because it is something that's really heartbreaking once you start looking into it. Because once you see that it's a again, we're all children of God, and we all deserve to be loved and to have dignity, and to see someone being pulled to that place of lack of love and compassion and lack of dignity, because their lives are completely changed. But yeah, so one of the things is this, the court monitoring and visiting the courts. And for Albuquerque, there's no court. You have to come to El Paso. So again, we've always said, you're welcome to come. There's woman's from for Marfa, St. Paul's, that comes every Tuesday. She comes, she's just retired, and she comes in the morning and the afternoons. That's one of the things that's calling her, as they have a coalition on immigration in that area. So we're very pleased with those. And again, we invite you to come and visit, learn whenever you have a chance. But yeah, the big thing is the prayer. And the Fort Bliss is just, again, that system of profit that is made out of people suffering. And that's our fear, because it's right in our backyard. We're meeting with different coalitions, nationally, locally, to see how we stand up, how we say this is not who we are, and see what we can do to remind the community and remind the migrants in our community that the majority of us really do love them and want them to be safe. And that means seeing where they're at, and if they're working. I mean, most of, like I said, yeah, they were working. I mean, this guy that they detained, he had been working at Walmart for like a year, and he loved his job, and so these are jobs that are essential, because someone is making it possible for us to buy our groceries. And we can't forget that migrants are essential to our community, and we got to remember that. And they're not criminals, and we don't got to get rid of them all and become the land of, I'm not sure. That's never who we've ever been. We've always
Yeah,
been
yeah,
a place where we welcome the migrants, and we come from a place of the indigenous, and they see that the love of brothers and sisters is important. But again, this
yeah.
policy and the history tells us that when it's about money, it's not going to be good. It's going to bring cruelty to most of the people in our communities.
Yeah, so I want to just sum up, just make sure people are understanding. There is a detention center in Estancia, which is just to the east of Albuquerque. It's about an hour and a half to get there from Albuquerque. And that's where there is an established routine through VITA to help get people can go and visit. And so there are clear and attorneys that are able to go and visit during some visiting hours. And so if you'd like information about that, we can help you actually go inside and see the conditions, see what's happening. The situation in Fort Bliss is a little different because there's still not access. In fact, it was difficult for clergy, are not currently allowed in, as I understand, as of today. And part of what we're pressing for is to allow the press and clergy to have access to the facility to see the conditions and to interview the people who are there. Because what we've been told by, there was one of the senators from Texas put out a thing last week that said they're all criminals in there. When Congresswoman Escobar went in, she put the lie to that and said, no, they're not. I talked to them and I met them. So making sure that there is some transparency whereby we are allowed in, meaning clergy can go and visit. That's an important thing that we want to do to monitor the system and find out what the conditions are. Because I mean, I think to me another key point that you're raising is about the treatment and that we're treating people who are our neighbors, who have lived here a long time, who are trying to follow the law by claiming asylum, by working jobs here. This is why we've been in the Diocese of Rio Grande calling for meaningful immigration reform, at least as long as I've been the bishop. That has been our constant mantra. We need to have work permits so people can legally be here to work. We need to have a clear asylum pathway so that that those who are criminals are the ones that are detained, but we're not detaining people who are trying to work at Walmart or they're trying to claim asylum. I mean, I think that's the reality right now. Is there's one bucket, everybody's thrown into that bucket. We're treating them all as if they're gang members who are a threat to society, and we're calling them all criminals because they're here without documents. But that is, in terms of the punishment fitting the crime, we're now incarcerating people for working at Walmart and for living in the United States, which is not fair. I want you also to talk about that there are people who are self-deporting, and we're involved in trying to help make that a safe process as well. Because even people who are deciding, I don't know if I'm going to go to my court date, or I'm afraid to go to my court date. We now have people who are afraid of the police because they're afraid that they're going to, that I can't report a crime, or I'm terrified of seeing a police officer because they might arrest me and deport me. And so there are some people that are just saying, I'm going to self-deport. And so there is a flow of people leaving the country. Tell us about our efforts with that and our work with Northern Mexico.
Yeah, so one of the things that started happening because of that fear of detention and families being separated. That's the biggest fear, that a lot of people that just say, I'd rather just leave because they've seen or heard and they don't want to deal with that. I mean, and because, I mean, I don't think if there was a possibility of me being detained in a jail, I would run from that, because we are just not people who should be enclosed in a small space. So, our survival instinct comes out. And so people are deciding if, because especially they're going after people who are here less than 2 years. And sometimes the lawyers have told them, really, there's not much we can do. And those are good lawyers, because sometimes we do have lawyers who will charge them, and knowing that they don't really have, but they just want to make some money. And unfortunately, so one of the things we work with is the Jesuit refugee service in Juarez. Well, here in El Paso and Juarez. And they have a program where they help people who are trying to leave the country. Be able to fly or go on a bus with a permit, like permit to be in Mexico for like 10 days. Um, or we also have, other, if they want to stay in Mexico, because some of them don't want to go back to Venezuela. They're really afraid to go. So they're trying to decide, now what do I do? Colombia, or I'm in Mexico, I had a good experience while I was there. Or maybe I don't even want to pass to Mexico and keep going. There's a lot of different stories, but they can actually help them get that permit, and then they can fly out or drive out. If you have someone like that in your community, of course, that program used to have funding to help, but at this point, at this time, they don't, but they still help with the permit. They have lawyers. But if you have someone you're supporting, that one of the things they do also need is financial support if they don't have it. To be able to get where they need to go. But some people have their own money. So there's a young man that is leaving, and he wants to go to Chile with his wife. He has a court date at the end, and they're choosing. Some people, there's a program that actually comes from the government that's like self-deport, but it takes a long time, and they promised $1,000, and we still haven't heard who has gotten that money. Again, that also takes a long time. And don't try it if you have any little offense, even a traffic ticket or anything, because they will detain you. They right away will use that excuse instead of letting you out. But what happens is families come here, and they stay, 1, 2 days, one day most of the time, because then they're ready to go to Juarez and we walk them over, and Jesuit Refugee Services right there. They're there with a truck, and so it's a beautiful thing to hand someone who is kind of in a fearful to another organization that's going to care for them. And so they stay in their shelters while they get that permit, usually like 2 or 3 days, and they're on their way. After they get to the south, which usually is like the Tapachula, which is down in the south border of Guatemala, then at that point there is programs there with JRS. They got to kind of make their own way, but Jesuit Refugee Service has shelters in these areas. So really, it's up to them at that point what they do. But we did have a man who was connected to one of our congregations in Albuquerque, went through the process. When he got to Tapachula, it took him like 3 days to get to Colombia where he wanted to go. It's a lot easier now. Now there's caravans going south. And then there's people just asking the Mexican government to stay, because some people do stay. In Juarez, there's a program that's trying to get people, into the schools, trying to get the works, their permits to be able to be in Mexico, because there's also, they need that. And I think, but it's so backlogged that it's gonna hard, but it's gonna take time. But what we're seeing in Mexico is in the countries where people are being deported is people with nothing. left with nothing. And so again, they just kind of like when they came to the US, and somehow they have to make it and survive, and they will, but with a lot of pain. And again, it's in our name with our taxpayer money that they came to that situation. And so we should be paying attention, first of all, prayer and being in action, even if it's just calling your congregants or writing congressperson, your representative, or writing an op in the newspaper saying, just remember that, as a person of faith, I believe these people have rights. And what scares us is that if they don't have due process, what's going to happen to us? At some point, we're not going to have that, and they're going to say that we're criminals, and they're just going to feed off of that word. So we got to really just reflect on that and pray and stand up for all we can. I mean, and one of the things we're worried about here in El Paso is, as they have given so much funding to ICE, that means they're going to be in our streets. They're going to have more agents. So we're also creating a rapid response group. We're having a meeting September 6th at St. Albans, and we're going to talk about what that can mean, like how we can support our community, creating a phone tree, training people to what to do when you encounter ICE, because we have a right, like ACLU has made many videos, we have a right to publicly record ICE, and try to get information from the family, because again, nobody's expecting this. This happened in our now we're worried about DACA students, recipients, that there's a woman that got arrested at the airport, Sochi, that worked for a local, very important nonprofit community organization, and she's still in the processing center. There was a man that got picked up in his house in Horizon City at the outskirts of El Paso, and he had his family in the car, and you see the video. Again, they weren't expecting that. He gets off his car, and suddenly, boom, there's 12 people on him, trying to arrest him with kids, and you see his mom trying to grab her grandchildren and being pushed. These are violent things that have our community frightened, because we don't know what to expect. We've heard stories that they mistaken someone, and they still take that person because they gotta. It's just so messy because it's done so quickly, and that's what I see in the courts too. I mean, the agents are like running around, and they're coming up to people that they're not even gonna arrest. And again, there's no need. Those people are not going to run. They're not running. They could, I've told them, maybe just get a little more organized. You're traumatizing the people as you're in front of them, and they don't understand that. They're like, well, they're criminals. So I'm like, it's a little hard. It's hard because it's not that simple. Life is not that simple. Yes. What kind of crime is it? Who are they? Are you okay with detaining this mom, dad, and three kids? Are they the ones we're supposed to be detaining? No, not at all.
Right. And that's where I think two things is, because I know you've got to run. So two things I want to say, and then let you close this out. The first is that anybody in the United States who is unhappy with this being the way our government operates can write to your congresspeople, you can write to your senators, you can write to your governor. This is our government operating in the name of the United States citizens. And so, I think that it is not too much to ask for our government to differentiate between hardened criminals and people who work at Walmart. I think it is not too much to ask for law enforcement as they enforce the immigration law. I don't think it's too much to ask that they do so in a humane way. I also think that we can write and say that that's our expectation, that our government would stop behaving in this way. We can also express concern about building detention centers which are designed to detain people long term. And particularly when we know that the people they are detaining are not criminals, they're not violent criminals. They are people who have been living in the country and doing jobs here in the country, having families here in the country, that we can ask our government to live into our values and to not to have the punishment fit the crime, if you will. Second thing I want to say is that the work continues. You can go to Rio Grande Borderland Ministries. We still need funds to help pay lawyers who are representing people that we come across who have been taken off the streets, who have no criminal record, who need legal representation. we are actively doing that work, and also to support your work, Anna, in the courthouse and the community organizing that you're doing to help make sure that we can have access to the detention center on Fort Bliss, to make sure that people get visits, to help nurture that network, make sure people are visiting the detention center in Estancia. You can also write letters, and we can help connect you with people to help do the letter writing campaign. And if you'd like to come and participate, to go to the courthouse, see for yourself what's going on. If you'd like to come and go to the detention center in Estancia, we can help you with that. So there's still opportunities, even though we're not running a shelter anymore. We do have accommodation. If you want to come and stay with us for a week or two, that's still possible, right, Anna?
Yes. Definitely. I mean, this is a space for, like, we've had people on their sabbaticals, we had couples, we have a group of 6 or 7. I mean, we still offering our pilgrimage program. So any church outside of our diocese, within our diocese, that wants to do that one week, it just gives you an opportunity to just come and listen to what is really happening. So please do contact me. And I know, like in New Mexico, there's a special session, and the governor did bring back they're trying to, there's a group that's advocating strongly to remove detention centers from New Mexico. That would be awesome if that could happen, because that sends a message that our state does not believe in these pro-profit detention centers. And so again, just get involved. That Please contact St. Michael's All Angels with Reverend Mike Angel. He's very involved in that, and the visitations. It's very important. And one of the things that we had mentioned about the DWIs, and that case, that one of the cases that I have, it was this man who had gotten a DWI 10 years ago. And in his file is that he went through a program. I think it was a year program of, so that's about rehabilitation. And we believe that people can change. But with this new policy, it's like everything you've done is on you. And imagine living your life like that. We've all done some, we've experienced life. And if the government just puts that on someone, this is who you are, and we know that's not right. So that's one of the things I just wanted to say, because it's important to know that we're bringing back things that are not relevant anymore, that people have been forgiven. I mean, we believe in that forgiveness, and we can you know um reborn to a life with Christ and not live in those ways. But here, no. Sorry, this is who you are and this is who you're becoming. So yeah, we appreciate any support. Like I said, there's fees. I mean, the fees. There's a fee, immigration fee that used to be $1,000. Now it's $3,000. So with your donation and your support, we're trying to help people that find themselves in in these situations that are heavy, and how can we help them carry that load so they can at least be able to continue to support, because now they don't have a job. It's hard. They were the ones that were providing for their family, and now they're trapped in this system that doesn't even allow them to go to certain places. So yeah, your support, please donate, come support, call if you have any questions, or you want us to come to your me and Mike Wallens, my colleague in the Big Ben, are willing to go, either through Zoom or visit your congregation to speak and let you know. And we can have that dialogue and talk a little bit more of what our diocese and the National Episcopal Church is calling to do with migrants. And it's to welcome with dignity and compassion, to love, especially in those cruel places. A lot of the times the migrants tell me, well, it's God's will if I get arrested or not. And I have to say, I'm so happy that you believe in God and your faith has always led you to love others. But God's will is for you and your wife to stay together, not to be separated, and for you to be detained. Because what's happening downstairs once they encounter ICE, I see that as a darkness. Because again, how can you be detaining families? I mean, that's hard. And so we need to be that light. And I tell them you'll see God in that light of others that are going to try to be compassionate and loving if you do get detained. But please do not think that that was God's will, because then we have this guilt. Well, what did I do wrong? What did I do in life? No, it's just a system right now that is in darkness, that we need to bring, us as people of faith, as Episcopalians, we need to bring that light in our service, in donating, and in our prayers.
Thank you, Ana, for all the work you're doing. Keep up the good work.
For more information, you can go to RioGrandeBorderlands.org. We appreciate your help and support. And if you'd like to get to know more about what's happening here at the border, you can come and join us for a pilgrimage, a Borderland pilgrimage right here in the Diocese of the Rio Grande. We'd love to have you. God bless you. Keep the faith.